Hello, Civic alumni. I am excited to welcome two incredible leaders who have been working tirelessly to advance the collaboration between the 757 and Richmond. The idea of a megaregion is certainly not new. There are several well-known megaregions around the country that have enjoyed the successes of collaboration outside of their borders. Recently, a new organization was officially formed called RVA-757 Connects. To talk more about this today, it is my honor to welcome to the conversation John Martin, who is the president of RVA757 Connects, and Tom Frantz, the visionary who first identified the opportunity of a megaregion between Richmond and Hampton Roads. He has dedicated countless hours to this work and is the megaforce behind the creation of RVA757 Connects. Welcome, gentlemen. Tom, I think that you had some thoughts that you wanted to share with our Civic alumni before we get started to kind of give a little bit of the history behind how this concept kind of percolated. Would you be willing to share that with our group?
Thank you, Sarah Jane. Yes, I would. The initial discussion began about 2010. It was actually a piece of paper that Jim Ucrop slid over to me while we were in a William Mary Business School board meeting. And he said, shouldn't this be the market? And he had drawn a rough sketch of the ocean to Richmond on a legal sheet of paper. And I looked at it, and we then that led to a discussion of what's important to really kick off regional competitiveness. And we identified 4 factors that we're still talking about, and they are: 1, connectivity by road, rail, internet, energy, etc. Collaboration among the various participants. Innovation, which is becoming a big focus, and then most importantly, productivity, because the productivity is what kicks up the gross regional product and accelerates everyone's standard of living. So that began the dialogue. That was approximately 2010. That kicked off a number of meetings that we would have periodically, once, twice, 3 times a year, where we would have as many as 100 leaders from the 2 regions that would get together, and we'd have an agenda, and we'd talk about things and talk about what the opportunities were if we could do these things better. And we thought we could do them better if the 2 regions worked together than if we tried to do them individually. And at the time, there was a map called America 2050 and a plan as to where America was going by 2050. And on that plan was a very frightening picture. And it was the mega regions that were already developed at the time, like Cascadia, like the Front Range, like the Northeast, like Atlantic Piedmont, Central Florida, etc., that were obviously doing well. And in the middle of the East Coast was 2 separate dots, one for Richmond and one for us. And we said, not only do we offensively need to do something about this, defensively we need to do it, because we're going to become isolated silos and we're not going to participate in the expanded economy that is coming. And so those discussions kept going, and some of them were very good, and sometimes we would leave those meetings enthused, but we didn't have a staff, we didn't have a budget, we didn't have an entity. And it was about 2018, about the middle of the year, we received a call. I think it was from Ted and John and maybe 1 or 2 others from Richmond. And they said, you know, Greater Washington has reached out to Greater Richmond and ask us to become part of their mega region. And that's gotten us to thinking, and that we think connectivity and culturally we're a better fit with Hampton Roads at this time than going with the Northeast quadrant. And so that began a dialogue, and it got John and Moses Foster both involved. And that was a game changer for us because they had a way of taking our message, redoing our deck, redoing our communication, and presenting it in a much more understandable and compelling fashion. And that in turn brought the social media involved, and you could feel the enthusiasm among the next generation leaders elevating. And you could feel what we were doing. Now, in the early going, when we looked at other mega regions, we tried to focus on endpoint to endpoint ones like Leeds to Liverpool, like the Front Range in the Rockies, like Atlantic Piedmont, like the Northeast, because that's what we were, as endpoint to endpoint. And when we got together more seriously starting in 2018, we almost immediately had the success of the port expanding to the Richmond Marine Terminal, making the Richmond Marine Terminal, in essence, part of the port, which immediately elevated barge traffic and traffic between the two ports. And everybody, in a very eye-opening fashion, said, oh my God, when we connect better, we're better. And then we had 64 started to expand. We had HR TAC come into 4. We now have the Central Virginia one. We had the cable landing in Virginia Beach, and all those things happened to accelerate connectivity, and not only with the globe, but with each other. And I think that, and then we had the investment in the port of almost $800 million that densified the port and made it a real force on a global basis. So the combination of those things coming together, the leadership and vision of John and Moses having joined the fray, you could feel the acceleration. So that's sort of the pre-John history.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Tom. I think it's important for people to understand how long this really has been kind of working with the two different communities. And really, I know, Tom, you really were the visionary behind this, but there were also a lot of other leaders that were part of these conversations. So I think it's important to give the history on this. And John, I wondered if you could talk about the significance of actually forming RVA-757 Connects, and then about your role now taking us forward as in this newly formed organization as the president.
The significance of pulling this together and to thinking about ourselves, not just as two endpoints, Richmond and Hampton Roads, but as everything in between with Newport News and Williamsburg. We have an incredible innovation corridor right here. And what we have to realize, and now especially with COVID and the impact of this pandemic, we've got to figure out, how do we put ourselves on the worldwide map? How do we talk to people in a way that makes us so much bigger than we are individually? And so when you think about just the makeup of our population size, with Richmond being 1.2 million and the Hampton Roads market being just under 2 million, if you put it together, we are like 3.5 million. We're much bigger, and we move way up on the list just in terms of size of population area. So when people are thinking about moving companies or thinking about where they want to live, combined, we offer so much more. And so we came to this idea that together we're stronger. And it's not only with economic development, it's with quality of life. It's with the educational experiences. It's with the energy. It's with, as other people have mentioned, the new technologies, that we just think about ourselves in a much more powerful way when we think about us being together all along the corridor as one big market.
I think that's wonderful, and congratulations on your new position as well. A question for both of you really is, Hampton Roads has obviously been making great progress in regionalism and collaboration, and we're seeing an awful lot more of that. I think, there was a time when, everybody would say, well, all these different municipalities and cities, they work so separately, but now I feel like people are joining together. They see the power in numbers, and they see the power of looking outside of their borders. But of course, there's still this perception out there that we don't work together. So how do you both foresee that the benefit of actually having RVA-757 Connects, and to see how we can perhaps further advance that collaboration, both here at home in Hampton Roads, but also for the larger region as well?
I've seen that firsthand for a lot of years. And I think the main thing that started to hit people is that we were not succeeding as silos. And if you look at all the numbers and you consider our resources, and the numbers were going south where others who were collaborating and working together accelerated it. And then when you realize that together we would be the 17th biggest region in the country. And if you put yourself in the place of a member of a board in Paris or Singapore or Shanghai trying to decide to do something in America, they're probably just going to look at the biggest areas, because just from a time standpoint, and this, by marketing us together in some respects, we think we're going to win more opportunities. And what we're trying to focus on, Sarah Jane, is that we are not competitive to the wonderful economic development efforts going on in each region and in each city and county. We are supplemental and complementary to that. And what John and Moses and team are working on is a marketing package that combines statistics and combines more power, putting the two together, and a better opportunities for a company, and put that out there. And that's something that the Hampton Roads Economic Development Alliance or the Greater Richmond Partnership or Downtown Norfolk or any of them can use if they're making a presentation and they think that it would help them to be bigger. And we hope that over time that will become so accepted that people will look at the two regions together. And again, it's because of John and because of Moses and because of their abilities that we have this opportunity.
I think our success now, to the extent we've had some, is about culture. That what any organization needs to be successful is a real positive culture of leaders in leadership. And so what has happened is we have now some formal structure where we have meetings in Williamsburg, because it's the center of this entire corridor, easy to get to for all the different players up and down the corridor. It's easy to get to, but we meet and we talk and we think about the future, and we share stories, and we plot out our plans. And so what we're doing is we're learning not only about the assets of each other's regions and the assets of Williamsburg in the center of this. What we're really learning is to trust each other and to know each other. And I think that is really the remarkable thing going on, to have this sort of interconnectivity that's happening with the leadership all along the corridor. And that is turning into opportunities for people. There are firms right now, my firm's one of them, Mark Horgan Construction, Tom's firm. There are a number of firms that have always looked at this as one big market and do business easily up and down I-64. My license plate says RVA-NFK because I'm always on 64, moving back and forth. But it's moving back and forth and all around opportunities. So when you think about yourself operating in a much bigger market, much bigger things happen. And that's what's happening, I think, with the culture of the RVA-757 Connects and the enthusiasm and excitement that members close to this organization are feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I might be wrong in this, but I think with COVID-19, obviously that's a big elephant in the room, isn't it? That COVID-19 has certainly changed the landscape for the economy. But I think that people will start to look outside of living in major big hub cities, and the potential for our two regions to actually look far more enticing to companies that are perhaps looking to kind of settle and have the ability for their employees to have quality of life. And I mean, you think about all of the wonderful things that are happening in Richmond, the same down here in Hampton Roads, and the culture, I think, as you said, it's the culture between the two communities too, and they are very complementary. So I feel like that would be a benefit too, right?
Well, it's a huge benefit. It's one of the major trends or consequences of COVID-19. And we're already picking this up. If you think about the larger companies like Google and Amazon, they're already hiring people and saying, you will never come to our headquarters. You'll never go to an office, that we have figured out remote working. Well, the truth is we have all figured out remote working. We had to. So before COVID, 1 out of 3 of us were in what was called the distributed workforce, where we didn't go into the office, at least on a regular basis. And experts projected that that would reach 50% by 2030. Well, now all that's out the window, that we're going to be at least 50% of the workforce being distributed right after COVID ends. And what that means is that more and more people will have the ability to pick place first. They don't have to pick a place where their job is. And they're going to want to be near relatives and loved ones and family, but they're also going to be in a place that they feel like they belong and are affirmed. And they're going to flee from the colder climates, the crowded cities. And before COVID, we were seeing New York and Chicago and San Francisco actually having a net loss of population, and then the smaller mid-sized cities winning. And so I think that's going to be the story after we take care of COVID. When we come out on the other side, we have a unprecedented quality of life here along the corridor, the I-64 corridor, and we have an amazing cost of living and natural assets that are just really the world-class experiences that you can have outdoors, and then also a lot of cultural amenities that we've invested in that are first class. So I think it portends a great opportunity for us. And so I think in the long term, there's a silver lining for COVID, and it's spelled RVA757 Connects.
Like it. That's wonderful. So if you had that crystal ball, what do you think that the combined regions will look like in 10 years or 25 years from now?
Well, I think things are moving so fast. I wouldn't be surprised if within 10 years, we recognize ourselves and the world recognizes us as the innovation corridor, and that we are intentionally doing a lot of marketing around that, and that we are a very exciting place to live and work and raise a family with game-changing educational opportunities for the new collar, not the blue collar, not the white collar, but those types of jobs. William and Mary just got a $10 million grant in the last month to train veterans for their post-military career, and that's right at our heart. And obviously, with the number of veterans we have go through both regions, that is a huge opportunity. Colonial Williamsburg owns virtually all the non-public land at the Camp Perry exit, and is talking about an innovative development of that property, maybe with the development of a piece of it being development of talent. So the better we get at developing our talent and keeping our talent and exciting our talent, the faster we're going to get there. So I think within 10 years, we will be recognized as the innovation corridor, not only internally, but externally, more importantly, externally. And I think within 25 years, I think we'll be at an MSA. And I think we're there already. The question is developing the political will.
Well, I want to build on what Tom said. For those people that have a ping in their heart when they hear the word Richmond or the word Norfolk or Virginia Beach, those cities are never going to go away. Virginia Beach is the largest city in the Commonwealth. When Tom talks about a mega region that's SMSA, it's a technical government definition. But I think for 400 years, we've all had these wonderful brands of these hamlets, and they're going to always be in place. But what's going to happen is we're going to appreciate each other so much more because our economies are going to be locked together so much more in a really synergistic way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that you both should be commended for, continuing to encourage that collaboration between leaders. I truly believe that coming out of COVID, it is going to be the business leadership and the community leadership that is going to help to kind of shape what regions are going to start to look like after this. That recovery effort is going to be, it's going to be really important that they're part of that. So I think you both should be commended for continuing to have this open dialogue between the two communities to strengthen this entire region, because there are so many different opportunities here. I did have one more question for you. I'm going to throw it out there because I want to make sure that we touch on the successes that you all have seen. So I wondered if you could share some of those success stories about the partnerships that have been formed between the two areas. The port being obviously the very first one at the very beginning, but there's been others along the way. So John or Tom, would you be willing to share with the group a little bit more about that?
What we have noticed, some things come together, some that we have been directly responsible for and others that I think indirectly responsible for. I think one that just happened that is fascinating. The General Assembly a few years back gave the permission to certain size cities to be able to tax themselves for transportation improvements, let's say. And Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads fell into the category of being able to do that. And so Hampton Roads leadership put together a penny sales tax and created a huge fund that is now funding the largest roadway construction project in America. And so the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, if you go across it at any frequency, you see some activity going on because it's going to be expanded. And you think about the road on 64 from the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel to Williamsburg, most of it now has already had a widening. And all of that work happened because of the right that Hampton Roads had to do that self-imposed tax. Well, Richmond wanted the same thing, but we weren't large enough. But our friends in Hampton Roads, working with the folks in Richmond, convinced the General Assembly that, yeah, Richmond should have that same opportunity. So this past season in the General Assembly, we actually got the approval to move forward to be able to tax ourselves and create what is going to be a transportation authority. And so that's going to fund road improvements and also transit improvements in the greater Richmond region. And that's going to actually come back and help Hampton Roads because it's going to be more connections, more ways to get around for more people, and to hopefully for both entities and every city in between, for us to really work more on equitable economic development. And transportation is part of that pathway. A third success story is, again, a lot of this comes from just communicating and having conversations with senior leaders through the forum that we've created. But the incredible opportunity for Virginia Beach and Hampton Roads with these undersea cables is enormous. And I just applaud the Hampton Roads community with Virginia Beach's leadership to say, look, it's not just going to come here and be for Virginia Beach. We're going to make this work for Hampton Roads, and we're going to have a whole digital network ring to connect all of our communities. But then from there, the cable goes out across America, but it does come through Richmond as I call it a pumping station, but much like you think about a water pump, just to push out the power of the digital connections. And so in Richmond, what we've seen, the huge Spanish company that is really behind the cables, that they came to Richmond and saw one of our high-tech office parks right outside the airport. And they said, oh my gosh, we really want to invest here. We really want to put a pumping station here, digital pumping station. And we really want to help some of these companies around here. And so we have a big Amazon distribution center. And so there's now a whole little network happening in an office park right by the airport that is benefiting directly and tied in directly to those high-speed cables that are coming ashore in Virginia Beach. So that's just one more example of the connectivity that's happening that we're trying to foster through RVA-757 Connects.
Yeah, the broadband component of that is incredibly important. I mean, we all now we're so reliant on that to be able to do business while we've been going through quarantine period. So it's huge. And the opportunity that it offers in that corridor between Richmond and also Williamsburg in particular, that open area there. I know I'm proud of the CIVIC class of 2020. We had a group who did a community impact initiative on the broadband data centers, and they kind of worked out where these data centers were. We didn't have a list of those, so this is like the starting point. So it is exciting, and I do think the connection will be important. Tom, I know you wanted to add a little something, I believe, with regards to the expansion of rail. I thought that you had some other comments that you might want to share.
Yeah, I wanted to just mention two additional points. One is that last year, as everybody knows by now, there was an opportunity for about a $2 billion investment at Jefferson Lab for an accelerator that came down between us and Brookhaven. And that really got this organization and people in both regions motivated. We were able to form a Friends of Jefferson Lab that included about every CEO in Richmond and Hampton Roads, which was unheard of, supporting that opportunity. And it brought about the recognition of how strong we are in the center, in the peninsula, and what it would do if you had this expansion and you added a couple thousand scientists to our center. And we lost that, but at the same time, it was a great awakening on the innovation opportunities. And then I want to go back in time just a little bit, because starting in 2015, from the meetings we were having, we came up with an annual legislative agenda. And we always had on that legislative agenda the densification and strengthening of the port for the global connectivity, and the improvement of the roadways between us for connectivity between us and from us to everywhere. And we saw that, as we mentioned earlier, when we were able to get the funding for the densification of the port. And when there came a time where the Richmond leadership could influence the Richmond City Council and be able to come up with a lease to the Port of Virginia that tied the two together. So if you take road investment, port investment, everybody realizes how important connectivity is in the piece, and how this organization, even before it was an organization, was influential in these two aspects of it. And then we saw how important it was to get us all behind an opportunity for connectivity and innovation. I think that the time is perfect for the next steps and for this organization to help accelerate everybody's gain.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so that actually is a great segue into something that we do on every single CIVIC program day, which is to leave a call to action for our CIVIC alumni. So what do you feel our region's leadership should be doing to support this initiative, and how can our CIVIC alumni become involved in advancing this work?
Well, I'll start with the what we're permitted to do under our articles of incorporation, and then John can relate it to what he's doing from a leadership standpoint. The articles provide that we'll have about 35 directors, one of whom will be John, and then we're looking for 17 from each region. And we're looking for a good mix of directors that are inclusive and diverse, of including all generations. So not just the same people we've always had, but some new folks with new ideas, etc. And then we're allowed up to 150 people on an advisory board. And then we're going to have a number of committees that are working on important issues and opportunities. And I would hope that the CIVIC alum that are interested in this and their counterparts in Richmond will populate all of those opportunities. When fully up and running, I expect we'll have hundreds of people involved at some level. And it's going to be a bit of a challenge to put all those together, but it helps if you raise your hand and you're enthusiastic in raising your hand and you remind us that you've raised your hand. John will have to put together the framework and the organization that allows us to pick up the right people. And that's starting with a meeting he's put together here shortly to go over a matrix of possible board people. And CIVIC has been very helpful in providing us with sort of the skill set of a lot of their alums. So thank you very much, Sarah Jane.
Absolutely.
So John, I guess you.
Well, I have a little more of an emotional answer. I'm glad Tom shared the legal and rational side of what's next. In terms of a call to action, I want people to embrace the real aspiration of our name, RVA-757 Connects. And think about connects as really an active verb. We're connecting everything. I want to give you a quick personal story. I have the real honor and privilege of being able to call both regions my home. I live in Richmond and I live in Norfolk. My license plate says RVA NFK. So I get to bring friends from Richmond to Norfolk for the weekend and vice versa. And what I can tell you is that both sets of friends from each market are just blown away at the experience they have in their visit market. And they are like going, John, I cannot believe what Norfolk and Hampton Roads has to offer and all the outdoor amenities. And then the same when they come from Norfolk to Richmond, all the cultural amenities. And so I think that surprise needs to be eliminated, that we need to connect in so many ways on so many levels that all of a sudden, instead of having 1.2 million ambassadors in Richmond and 1.7 million ambassadors in Hampton Roads, that we really have together, 3 million people screaming to say, come check this place out. This whole place is nothing but a bunch of connections with excited people that realize that we have an unprecedented quality of life and we have an incredible amount of opportunities for everyone to thrive here. So I want Connects and everybody else, CIVIC and everybody else to connect in every way possible.
So alumni, that was your call to action. And so don't forget that. And also when that phone rings and you are asked to stand up and be part of this amazing initiative, I hope that you will say yes. And we hope that you will also share any ideas that you have for these two regions to collaborate more. And we really appreciate John and Tom being part of this conversation today. This is the first of many conversations. Eventually, we'll all like to be here in person and actually see each other. But for now, I appreciate it, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us.
Great.
Thank you, Sarah Jane.